Hello and welcome back to another episode of Straightforward Tanks, a series in which I show you how you can paint your vehicles using nothing but an aerosol spray primer and normal brushwork. In this video I'll be showing you how you can paint the US tanks in their European colour scheme using the Warlord Games M10 Tank Destroyer. I'll also be using the Army Painter's range of paints to do so. So here we have the tank, and as you can see I've already primed it, and I've used the Army Painter's Army Green spray primer, which gives us this kind of nice olive drab effect. Now the first thing you want to do is darken the overall colour. It's a little bit light at the moment, and for this we'll be using a wash of soft tone ink. Now for this step I'm using my large dry brush, and the reason why I'm using this is because it's quite a large brush which allows me to cover a lot of the tank at once with a single brush stroke, and also allows me to load a lot of the wash onto it as well. Now as you can see here I'm just being quite liberal, just applying it over the entirety of the tank, and the good thing about making these turrets removable is you can kind of just take them off as and when you need to. And I'm just going to be making sure that I get this wash over the entirety of the tank. Now I've mixed in a small amount of water as well, and this just improves the flow slightly, so stops it from being as streaky on the miniature. Once you've completed applying the wash and you've applied it to the whole miniature and it's dried thoroughly, you can start with dry brushing along the edges of the armour just to create some nice dusty raised sections where it's worn. For this we'll be using necrotic flesh. So for this step I'm using the same large dry brush as I did in the previous step. I'm going to be focusing this very lightly along the edges, just dusting it just to create some lighter highlights along the edges of the armour, like so. I don't want to have too much on this stage, so make sure you remove quite a lot from your brush, as you want to just have a very pale highlight like so. Now the next step in painting your tank is to paint the tracks and also the road wheels, just in the suspension there you can see them, and we're going to be painting all of these areas with matte black. So for this step I'm using my monster brush, and this is because it's quite a large brush, so it allows me to cover quite a large area quickly. Now I've mixed in a small amount of water into the mix here just to improve the coverage slightly, and once this is dry I'll be applying a second coat, and that'll give me a really nice and even coverage across the miniature. Now as well as painting the tracks and also the road wheels here, I'll be painting any of the additional items like stowage items such as these racks on the side there, the cable, and also the tools on the back of the tank as well. Now the next step in painting the tank is to paint any of the stowage items such as the handles on the tools at the back here, and painting those areas with leather brown. Now for this step I'm going to be using my regiment brush, as it's slightly smaller, gives me a little bit more control over these finer details. I'm just going to be very carefully picking out the wooden handles of the tools with the leather brown like so. Now before we move on to the weathering step, I would advise that you would place any of the transfers you want to apply on your vehicle at this stage, as we will be weathering over them. So once you've completed the transfers, and as you can see I've gone for some on the side of the turret here and also some on the hull, the next step is to apply some weathering, and we're going to be applying some grime into the recesses, and for this we're going to be using strong tone ink. Now for this step we don't need to worry about being too neat, so I'm using my monster brush here again. I'm going to be kind of focusing it into the recesses, anywhere where you would imagine that dirt and grime will be accumulating, especially around the tracks at the bottom. I'll also be kind of applying a small amount along these sections on the hull here, just drawing the lines down just to create the effect of oil and mud that's accumulated and then drip down the side of the armour. Once you've finished adding in dirt and grime into the recesses of the armour, we can now start adding in some mud to the tracks and around the bottom of the skirts, and for this we'll be using leather brown. Now for this step I'm using my large dry brush, and this is so we can get some kind of dried mud effects in the bottom there, so I'm just going to be brushing them in this kind of action here as if the mud's being flicked up off of the tracks and onto the skirts, and we're going to be doing this all the way along like so, and then on the fronts as well we can do the similar kind of action. Okay, I'll be continuing this across all of the tracks and all of the suspension as well, just kind of give it a really kind of mudded effect. So now that we've finished applying the mud to the sides of the armour in various places, we're now going to be adding some battle damage to the corners, and for this we'll be using a 50-50 mix of uniform grey and also matte black. Now for this step, instead of using a normal brush, I'm still going to be using this piece of sponge here that I got from a blister pack, and I'm going to be I've dabbed it all in the paint already, and I'll just be applying it very gently to the edges just to simulate paint chips just on the corners there. You can see there, just very, very gently. And you can apply this in places where you would expect chips to occur, such as on the edges of things and around the bottom of the plates like so. And here we have the completed miniature. Now whilst I've used an M10 Tank Destroyer for this particular tutorial, you could apply the same colour scheme and also the techniques to any of the US tanks, such as the Sherman for example. Now, if you enjoyed this tutorial, do let me know in the comments below, as well as which other kind of colour schemes and also camo schemes you would like me to cover in the future. Additionally, subscribe to be kept up to date with all my latest tank painting tutorials. Now, if you want to support me in making more videos, you can do so by heading over to my Patreon page, and if you do so, it'll be a big help to me. You can just donate it from as little as $1 a month, and that just goes to help providing me with the materials and time and everything that it takes to make these tutorials. So until next time, thanks for watching, and goodbye.